Hello and welcome back to the worst Warmachine channel on the internet. I'm Dorian and it's time for another Warmachine Weekly. I don't know when I started screwing that up and calling this Malorian Weekly, so let's get this back to what's actually important, which is the Warmachine. And know what else is really important? My patrons, and what they went and picked over on Patreon for me to talk about this week was actually how can we use these updates to the game to be drawing back in more players into the game. Now, before I start talking about this, I really want you to realize that there's two sets of people for those who once played Warmachine but now don't. So on one side you have the people that left the game because maybe when it went from Mark II to Mark III they didn't really like all the way that Mark III was working and they're like, screw it. Maybe they didn't like themes, maybe they didn't like Archons, maybe they didn't like Asphyxious 4, maybe they didn't like Archons, maybe they weren't getting updates in time. If it was something that was game-based, that's really what the focus is of this video. There's another group of people, though, that left the game for other reasons. Maybe the reason they're not playing Warmachine is because they had a kid and they just don't have time anymore. Or maybe they decided to focus on their work or a different hobby or something like that, right? There might be something not game-related that is the reason why they left, and what we're going to be talking about them is probably not going to work on them, but at the very end, we'll talk about how maybe you might as well send out that lure and see what takes the nibble. So let's get back to actually then what actually is changing right now, because maybe you're not aware. There are some big changes happening right now in Warmachine. Privateer Press and Faye are hitting us with these massive changes. I mean, back when they had told us these are the biggest changes since the Mark III update, it was okay, we'll see. They did not lie. This is massive. Already we had a release come out that had all of the nerfs, right? All the downgrades to models, and we already know there's going to be lots of changes because they said half the models are changing. And so in these set of nerfs here, we got to see some changes, and there's some really great ones in there. Go back and see my video on that. But there wasn't that many. I mean, there's a lot, but I mean, when you're looking at half the models in the game, it wasn't that many, meaning there's lots of other changes. The update that came out yesterday was all about the ease of play, right? These are things where they're not really changing things to be making things better or worse, although some things did get significantly better or worse. But overall, it's one of those things where base to base type stuff, right? Where normally if you had to go in and be base to base for this effect to work, now you can be within an inch. And that's just something that just makes it easier for all of us. So step one was all the nerfs. Step 2 was just all the convenience to play type thing. And then step 3, which will be coming out on, I think it's October 25th is the date. Of course, we'll have to see how that shifts given time and, other changes they might want to make. But that's going to be all the buffs. And that should be a significant thing where they're going back to all these old models that aren't seeing any play. And then boom, psyching those up. Now, so that's all that's happening right now. That's all the big changes, and it's a lot. It's a big, huge shift in the game, but we're not here to talk about the change specifically. We're talking about how can we use this change to be getting people back into the game. Now, I think what you really need to know is the reason why they left the game. So if somebody just disappeared and they kind of grumbled one day and flipped the table and left, you might not really know what the real thing was. But I think for most of us, for people that we gamed with, we were friends with them, probably still are friends with them, and then they left the game, we have an idea of why they left. And I kind of feel that these 3 changes is going to kind of touch on all those main things that they probably were worried about. So let's talk about the nerfs first. If somebody left the game because they felt these things are too powerful, Archons come out, they're just invalidating everything else, they're just dominating the game, you can go to those people now and say, just wait a second, I know you're really bothered about Asphyxious 4 and the Archons and all those types of things. They were fixed. And this is something that now Privateer Press is looking at. And I think that's a big thing that framework to be looking here is that it's very simple to be looking at this, or perceiving this and looking at it and assuming that Privateer Press is now just going to go and just do a power creep, right? They're going to try and sell models by making things stronger and stronger and stronger. Other companies do that, and maybe Privateer Press is doing this now, and so other players are like, screw it, I'm not going to go and play this game that's all about power creep. I'm out of here. And so that alone might be like one of the arguments somebody used to leave, but seeing this and seeing this massive effort to go back and look at like what's too strong, let's just bring that bar down. Okay, let's look at everything where the bar is too low and bring that back up, right? And then just, like the ease of play stuff too, but the fact that they're looking at that really goes against that narrative. The narrative that it's just power creep, try and sell models by just the new release always being best. Well, if that was true, they would not be nerfing those releases. Some really new, some not so new. And also they wouldn't be buffing all these other models. That's just not something a company would do if their strategy is power creep and sell that type of way, right? Kickstarter every single month, every single release is stronger than the last, right? That's clearly what Privateer Press is not doing. So you can already kind of say right there to those people like, ease, it's all good, look at this. They're obviously trying to fix things. And again, for the people that left for those specific reasons, like, oh, Archons are too strong, whatever is too strong, look, they're looking at these things, they're fixing them. Thumbs up. Another group of people that you might want to be talking about too is even just kind of like the casual players, right? The casual players would be those people more interested actually in the idea of like these like convenience in play changes, because to them, they probably don't care so much about what things are super powerful, what things are not super powerful. They're just in there for a good time. And to them, those convenience changes are going to be the things like, oh, that's awesome. That's always annoying where like has to be exactly base to base for all these types of things. And just like trying to line all these things up, like for the Mariner, back when it had to be like base to base to do that, it was always like such a pain trying to like clog your lines up and have to go exactly here and all these things. Now that it's an inch, it just makes the game easier. So to those types of people, they would really like the idea of things just being easier to play. Now, let's also talk about the casual but actually secretly competitive. You could call them the semi-competitive, whatever you want. There's obviously those groups of people where they want to play the game and they want to be able to be competitive and bring pieces to the table and be strong. But look, we don't want to have to go and always be buying the best things that are out there. I don't need to be always going there and memorizing all these things going on. Look, I've bought, let's say 100 points of models. I should be able to grab this and come in and compete and not just be destroyed by strange bedfellows every single week. To those types of people, they're going to be interested in the nerfs and really the buffs, right? The idea that for a lot of these people is like, look, I show up, maybe twice a year, come to there, and it turns out all the stuff I have is crap and all this new stuff is just dominating me. Going to those people now and saying, look, all those things, they've realized that was an issue, so all your things just got stronger. You don't need to buy anything new. And then all the things that really were terrorizing the meta was brought down. And that's a fantastic thing. For those people who are like, oh, well, then that means that bar has been leveled. I've already made my investment. I bought all these models. I can now bring them to the store and actually have a good game. So those are going to be your main three strategies for those types of people. And that was already now kind of hoping you knew the reason why they left. If you don't know the reason why they left, you can always just ask them, right? You can always just be like, hey, whoever, I'm going to use the word Josh because locals will know why, and be like, Josh, buddy, we miss you here playing, and I think it was for these reasons. I'm not sure. What was the reason why you left, right? And you can be getting that information back. Maybe they'll say something that was not changed right now, right? Maybe they don't like the idea of cross factions and stuff like that. Okay, well, unfortunately, that's not anything we can fix. But having that conversation does several things for you. One, it confirms what their actual issues were with the game, which will lead you in that conversation. Oh, you were worried about these powerhouses. They were brought down. You were wanting your old stuff to be competitive. Here you go. The games that seem too tight and finicky. Hey, look, they're finding ways of making things work easier. So there's that one part. But here's the other thing, like we can talk a lot about the strategy of like what was their weakness. We can go and debate them on all these things. You know what's one of the biggest reasons that people want to play a game is because they're friends with the people there. It's not so much like you're playing Warmachine, Warhammer, tic-tac-toe, whatever it is. Look, we're all people. We have to slave through the week. We're fighting with bills. We're fighting with life. And for this one night a week, we get to escape, hang out with our pals, maybe have a drink, maybe do whatever. But that's the main thing, is just like hanging out with friends and forgetting, the sins of capitalism and all those types of things, right? And so reaching out and just talking to these people might be enough right there, where they're like, look, this person cared enough about me and missed me enough that they want me to come back in this game. All those other topics you're talking about might not even matter. However, it's at least an icebreaker that you can use yourself, right? It would be nice where if you didn't see somebody playing for a month or whatever it is, you make contact and be like, hey buddy, how's it going? Are things all right? Haven't seen you for a while. And start having these conversations. Who knows? Maybe it has nothing to do with Warmachine. I had a conversation with somebody recently, and it turns out they fell off a cliff and broke their leg and ribs. So it's like, oh my God, okay, so that's why we haven't seen you, right? There's real life things going on, and that kind of all just leads in together. But now, you have something in your hand for the reason where if you're a little bit timid, don't want to ask, be like, hey, just so you know, we've been missing you, and there's all these changes. I thought this would be a great time for you to come back in. And whether some of that information changes their mind or not, the fact that one of their old friends, one of their old gaming buddies is coming to them and saying, hey, look, I missed you. That alone might be enough to bring them back in. So use that. Make that a challenge. For all you people out there, make that a challenge for you for over this next month as we get to the next release. And after that, think of somebody in your meta that obviously it's pandemic times. You haven't seen a lot of people recently. That's all cool. Hopefully you've been still in contact with your own Facebook groups and stuff like that. So if there's somebody that has not been participating in those groups, reach out to them. Maybe use this as a primer for the reason why you're talking to them. Or maybe just you haven't had those Facebook groups at all, and they're just literally is like, gaming people that you just haven't touched base with in a year because Warmachine in your area has basically been locked down. Use this again as this time to reach back out and be like, hey, big changes are happening. Hopefully soon we'll be back to gaming. How about we use all this to kick things off again? And maybe that's going to be my last point, is just that everybody loves a fresh start, right? It's one thing to be like, oh, there's a change. Gatsby went up 1 point. And it'd be like, okay, well, there'll be a change, but it's not that significant. Everybody likes the freshness of a Mark IV. Nobody knows why they want a Mark IV. There's no rules that they stay at the same time that should be changed. They like this idea of like this big new reset, and then off we go. And that's what this is for many reasons, right? It's basically the world going to be reopening up here in the next couple of months. We have all these massive changes. So it's not really Mark IV. It's like Mark 3.5, but it's such a significant change. This meta is going to be going crazy. We're going to be seeing now infantry again, I bet, and who knows? So I guess we have to see where these buffs are going, but everybody likes jumping on that ground floor. So do that. Use these changes to reach out to them, spark some new friendships again by having these conversations, and we're all going to be the better for it in 2022. So there you go. Thanks for watching. Again, a huge shout out to all my patrons. I got my content overlords, Darrell and David, and I got my content manipulators, Adrian, Dorian, Jordan, Nereik, and Sloth Monarch. So thanks to all of you. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you later. Bye.